And we're back with the part 2 of the Melbourne Punters show, or what about the punters? And I put the question up on Twitter on Thursday when I was basically incapable of speaking down there at Warrnambool, is am I a wombat or a pickle? Another friend of the show, Paddy Davies.
Why?
Oh, because if you actually read the previews that I did on the Punter Show site, I found a heap of winners, including the Terry O'Sullivan one that won at 25-1. Like what Glenn said last week, when he was betting on the trots in the running, the thing in the death was $26, but he couldn't quite get the brain to tell the finger to hit bet. That's what I had. I had a case of why haven't I fucking backed these when they crossed the line? So I've been handling it poorly. Paddy Davies, friend of the show, I was talking to him about it at Flemington on Saturday. He thinks I might be more of a muppet. There's probably a case to be made there too.
Another good Melbourne supporter, Paddy.
Yes.
Good man. What a good man.
So I've just been handling it poorly. But in saying that though, Potts, I don't know too, and I reckon over the last, there was a lot of blokes that I know that do bet and make an earn out of the game. We're all at Warrnambool, or I saw them or spoke to them over the weekend, and there's not terribly many of them that are winning at the moment, Potts.
Yeah,
so
look,
I'm not alone.
And you're talking about footy and all sorts of stuff as well, but just particularly in regard to racing. So, I just want to touch on the fact that the last 3 weeks have been diabolical for my subscribers and me and our DK and Potts subscribers. We've just sent out too many rubbish tips, and the good tips we've identified we haven't had a lot of luck with, but we've got to, we're refining our process to try and eliminate some of those poorer selections. So I think if I just touch on what you're talking about, with a lot of guys are struggling at the moment. There's a bunch of circumstances that are feeding into it. I think the reality is we're coming through a period where the form feeds include Mornington and Bendigo.
Yep, and then Sandown Hillside.
Sandown Hillside. Shit. Yeah. And then there was the complete opposite of Sandown Hillside in Sandown Lakeside. Mm-hmm. So it's all very mixed up. And then you're having a smattering of synthetic meetings coming into the mix. And then Warrnambool puts a big hole in the whole thing, because you have a lot of horses that were just having prep runs for Warrnambool.
Hashtag except for the bull.
Except for the bull. And then, 3 big 10 and 9 race cards down there.
Yeah, no, they're all 10s.
All 10s, with big fields. Awful lot of horses. A handful of those races at Warrnambool dragged high-class horses, which left that meeting at Flemington, which I've only really identified in hindsight. I should have thought through this in foresight. The majority of the races at Flemington on Saturday were really provincial to midweek standard.
Yes.
There was only really 2 proper Saturday races there on Saturday.
Unfortunately, because nothing but self-interest, but I'm with you. I shit one on Saturday. Went well at Caulfield the week before, which railed back to the true, so thankfully that was the one thing I can hang my hat on recently, but I'm not a long way away from it. But I think apart from the standard of the horses, which doesn't overly worry me, the significant factor on Saturday was the brutal wind. So if you, and this is really, I just want to underline something here, because it's something, hopefully it's something I've learnt through really studying Vince's figures hard. The back straight was greatly wind affected.
Yes.
You didn't know quite how much. I know you can measure those things, but you try and... So let's have a look at the ones that were advantaged, because conversely the back straight, headwind, tailwind, up the straight. Bo Rada is a horse you can have great confidence in measuring, right? So Bo Rada is having its 13th start for the prep, going super, showing no signs of having had enough. On Vince's figures, he ran 12 lengths above benchmark last 400. Fucked.
Yeah.
So I've looked at his whole career profile. The fastest he's ever gone is 8 lengths above benchmark last 400. So if he's rock hard fit, and he's not going to improve.
No.
And he's 13th run, he's going to maintain, but he's not going to improve. So I reckon you can really confidently say that up the straight, 4 length advantage. So conversely, 4 length disadvantage if you're leading into that back straight brutal wind. And you could probably say that when you're finishing a race and it's assisting you, you're feeling good, so you want to go faster. But if you're working hard into it, it's probably even worse. So it's probably a 6 to 8 length, maybe 10 length if they weren't fit pots, like a ribeye, for instance.
Yeah.
Disadvantage. So be very careful when you're looking at the Flemington figures, and have a look at position running. I'm not a massive video watcher, but in this case, this is where you do look at the videos and say, right, who is doing it tough and who is jibbing it? And the one last part I want to add, why the fuck did anyone try to get cover down the straight in the straight races when the wind was behind your backside?
It's
You're not getting cover.
It's very interesting you mentioned that, Ralph, because I had to go to the Lawn Undercroft a couple of times, and when you come out of the back of the stand there, you look at the flags on the top of the winning post, and I noticed how hard they were blowing. So I actually went for a brief walk down to the lawn, and I know I spoke to Potts the week before at Caulfield when Potts rang me and said, "What's the wind doing there?"
Yep.
The wind was stronger on Saturday at Flemington. Like
Yes.
it was howling down the straight. And then you also have to take into account in Flemington, because in that back straight, they're actually running, they're not running directly into that headwind, they're running with it sort of at an angle into it.
I would say in footy terms, because it's different angles, like,
Yeah.
you know, it's probably like a contact sport. So it's
Yeah,
buffering
because
either side.
it would have been,
Yeah.
it was really, really strong.
So
down on
who else is
Saturday.
like High Church, I mentioned Ribeye
Yeah.
and so forth. So have a look at that. And conversely, the dumbest rides, as I said, were the ones getting cover up the straight when the wind's assisting you.
Yeah.
Because Euston Road had no cover the whole way.
Yeah,
Winds
it
at
was,
$17.
it was just jump out and do your best, because you were just being blown home by
Exactly. So did you reckon that's...
Yeah, I mean,
A point
Euston
or
Road
not
came
point?
from gate 1 though. So
What's that?
Euston Road was in gate 1, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying was...
So that was the wind cover.
It didn't need
side.
cover, and didn't get cover.
Yep.
Because it's
So I'm
up the
saying,
backside.
but well, it wasn't direct at their bums. It was sort of coming. The horses out wider would have been getting more of the wind, and from their backs.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like anyway, I just
Anyway, I was shit, so...
no, you're right. I mean, the times down the straight are enormous. They're just so quick. They bear no resemblance to around the circuit. But I thought the wind was just as much of an impact at Caulfield the week before. For the
But that was down the side, 800.
yeah, down the side, you needed,
Yeah.
particularly from the shoot start, you needed
Yeah.
that cover. You
Yeah.
couldn't be exposed. So
And gee, I don't know if you've heard this before, and I've spoken to Jason Richardson about it, still Gifford if you don't know, but
57 steps to glory.
you've done the full sportsman's night, I wasn't going down that path, but because I once read about it, that there is a way, sprint training for human athletes, to train them downhill, to get it, I think it's called overstriding or something. So it's actually it's a way of improving their overall speed, because they're running faster than they possibly can in a normal situation, and it actually quickens them up. And Richo said he did the same thing. So I think what you'll find is that you don't need to knock horses around very quickly, and it probably will assist them, because it's not a bad habit running fast if you're in a race.
Well, it does help.
I'd imagine there must have been some real gust or something, because there's something very odd about race 1 on Saturday. There's a section early in that race.
Yeah.
It's either immediately out of the gates, but I don't think it is. I think it's the next 100 metres that they ran a 100 metre bit that was just so fast.
And then they dropped.
It's so the wind must have gusted up or something.
So I'm fascinated by Marius, because I was completely shoulders back.
Yeah, so was I.
Unfortunately, you were too.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the things I reckon is really important as a punter is to afterwards say, all right, it's a bit like repricing a race, but in a different mindset, to say, if that exact same race in front of us next time, would I change anything? I've got to say I wouldn't. And I heard Dino Sunday morning, as I'm about to post my stuff, and he said, well, that was only a 400 metre sprint, but I liked it because it was an anchor drop and all that. And the market liked it. And then the next day, on correct weight, he said, well, it hadn't done that before, and he's right. And in the end, if you're right, you're right.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, I want to see in time what that meant, what that filly's got. Because maybe it was just end of prep, they might have got the money, it might be other reasons.
So I don't care what Dean says. We're going to disagree on that one. Marius ran 4 lengths worse on Saturday than it did at Caulfield.
No, his point.
So I'm saying that over time, if Marius gets an opportunity, it will prove that the Caulfield run is more reflective of its ability than what it did on Saturday.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying.
And he wasn't knocking, by the way, but he's just saying it was a different circumstance.
But that doesn't explain the run.
It doesn't. That's my point. Yeah, I'm with you.
I don't agree with you.
But stamp the race, because both are Hazy's first starters and Corson's first starter.
Yeah.
Good horses. They ran unbelievable time. It was wind assisted, but I
would say
it was a good race.
Both of Hazy's first starters ran exactly as I expected them to run.
Yep.
Marius ran 4 lengths worse than I would have expected. I'm a Stars improved at least 5 lengths.
SP profile?
And, well, maybe. I mean, there were excuses at Caulfield, and horses can lose it.
Well, it was covering ground in that shoot.
They had excuses at Caulfield, but...
Doesn't explain Marius, I'm with you.
Yeah, it doesn't explain Marius, and it doesn't explain why Homicide would improve that much. So, that's the sort of race where if I was a steward, I'd be looking very closely at all the pieces of the puzzle there to try and make sure that it was all above board. It probably is because they're 2-year-olds, right?
Yeah,
and 2-year-olds are very, very fickle. Yeah. But that's a race that needs close looking into because the form reversals there are too dramatic that to initially make sense. You need to look into it to explain it. So, I've got questions I'd love to ask, but I don't have the access to ask them.
A couple of other things out of Flemington boys. Sapito, I spoke to you on Friday, Pods, and I said there's probably 4 rolls on this horse's price based purely on height, but he keeps just living up to the hype.
Yeah, he's gone enormous again.
Do you think it was hype, or do you think it was the real situation that, even again, hindsight, you say, well, he's not a 1,000-metre horse. Admiral's a good horse, and he's won by that much.
Yeah.
So, if you took your $1.55 or 50, what was the best?
Oh, no, he got out bigger than that, didn't he? Didn't he get? I think
maybe $1.70 or something.
Yeah, he got out big.
But what I'm saying is, if you said, "Fuck it, I'm back here because he's the best horse," well, you've won.
Yeah, but you've taken the whole thing.
That race, everything about the race makes complete sense to me. That whole race makes sense, and even the early betting. The corporates know they're going to be able to lay Saputo, so of course they're going to lay it as short as they can.
Yeah.
But then when the betting gets really serious later on track, I mean, I tried to mark Saputo as short as I could, and the shortest I could get, I think, was $1.90. I might have even been, I can't remember, it was about that. So what I'm saying is that's the way it was going to gravitate once the really big players got involved.
There'll be a lot of winners out of that race too.
Yeah, of course.
Hard was waiting for a wet track.
Yeah. It's a fast race, it's all good.
Hang on, Pods, are you saying that bookmakers might like to lay things at the bottom of the market? There's a novel idea. And,
well, I mean, the corporates get the first crack at it. They get to have that price sitting up there for 3 days.
Yeah.
And laying it to who knows who in multis and all sorts of things at well under the odds. Like, it was never a $1.50 chance, and they had it. That's where they had it. So fair play. So can I just? I want to make a point about Saturday because in the context of as punters, how do we handle a situation where we're having a bad trot? The results on Saturday were quite random, so I'll touch on that a bit in a minute. To earn your stripes as a punter that makes a profit out of the game, you have to battle through these type of situations when things are just running against you. This is when you're really in your day. Now, the way to do it is to just back off a little bit on the dollars per unit, make sure you cross all the I's, T's and dot the I's, and bet where you know you've identified edges. And that's exactly what I'll be doing over the next few weeks, so those that get my set will see that. The answer is not to dramatically change things that have worked in the long term. So you've got to be very careful what you change and what you don't, and you've got to analyse things carefully. You've got to be aware of what's happening. So there was a lot of horses on Saturday that won that were trained at Mornington in particular that ran a long way above their form. So that's something I'll be keeping a very close eye over the next little period. There were a lot of horses that were trained at Caulfield on Saturday that ran well below their form. So I'm not quite sure what the explanation
Could I offer? So we're talking Spur on Gold, ran very well, Mornington horse.
Yep.
Who else are you saying from Mornington?
Spur on Gold was the biggest improver of the day.
Was that Matt Laurie's horse?
No, it's Spur on Gold's Pat Carey.
So I'm a star.
But what I would say is that I think if you look at the turning circle, so we include Good Value, that's been retired, but won. You got Spur on Gold. You had disappointing runners like Ribeye. You had
Stratum Magic that ran second at 100 to 1 has ran massively above its form.
Fitness. So again, I reckon it was almost like a heavy track because of the resistance. That Fitness was a real premium on Saturday, even though it was a firm track.
Down the straight.
No, not down the straight.
I'm saying in Euston Roads race, Stratum Magic ran second at 100 to 1.
In which one?
Euston Roads race.
Funny race that. Still can't make sense.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
It does make sense.
And Flemington has run a couple of lengths. That sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
But she paraded very unusually for a Darren Weir runner.
In which way?
She was just agitated, and normally Darren Weir horses, 90% of them walk around the yard as calm as lambs, and they've got their game face on, they're ready to go.
I don't in the yard. Would you say that's cause and effect of a huge first up run after such a long time, the different experience for the horse, and it's a bit,
it's always, having absolute answers, Ralph, is always the most difficult thing. You can only just look at it and make judgments, but I would just make the point that the Weir runners over in Adelaide were much more like Darren Weir horses than the ones that were at Flemington on Saturday as a group.
Yeah, I just want to touch on something that Potts mentioned there with the. If you are serious about betting, there's one word that you need to always keep in the back of your mind, and that's variance. Winners don't come in regular intervals. They come when they come. You can't actually predict that. As long as you've got the edge, and it doesn't matter whether you're a professional poker player, like they know all the percentages and all they can do there, or whether you're counting cards playing blackjack, or whether you're betting on sports or horses, it's just about variance. Once you realise that it's just variance, you're not cursed, even though we all love blowing up on Twitter that we're all cursed and we're wombats and pickles. It is just variance, and next week it'll probably all turn around and we'll all be good.
Well, it's a very much a mental game, Juppy. So I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you in any way. What you say is absolutely right. But you got to have the tools to deal with those mental challenges and to react to them in the right ways.
But the starting point is back the fastest horses. Now, I backed, it's an absolute fact, 7 losing bets on 7 next start interstate stakes winners. So what do you like? And actually, a couple of Mark Lambo things I want to bring up here. The first one being, as he said, second means you're in the game.
Yeah, I'd rather run last.
It's not paying a bill,
yeah,
but it means you're in the game. So you got to suck up from that perspective. And then the other one of Mark's that actually had a bit of a flashback when we last did the show with Abby Marie. I reckon I'm still learning this in a big way. But remember Mark, I don't know if you remember Mark, about 4 or 5 weeks ago said place getters in slow time races.
Yeah.
But conversely that means that the winner does what it has to win.
Yeah.
So that's the Abby Marie thing I reckon to take out of that race. That, like, there was the anchor drop, he jibbed in the race, it was a perfect ride, smashed it, didn't run time, but he did what he had to win the race. So you can't over-penalise winners. Does that make sense?
No, that's true. I mean, when we last did the show, I expected that Abby Marie was going to be under the odds and label at the next start. She won, so I didn't look at the race. I don't know how it measured up in the betting, but I'm certain if I'd have been involved in that race, I would have backed Soul and Sedition and not Abby Marie. I'm certain of that.
One other issue to come out of Saturday, guys, was the track. I think the punters
before we go into that, Juppy, this is the bit I wanted to mention. Okay, apart from Saputo, who'd been in very good form and had Flemington form, I'll go through the other winners and tell you when they last won. I'm a Star was a maiden, so it's maiden. Euston Road last won in August 2015. Shockaholic won last in December 2015. Shosozo August 2015. Good Value September 2015. Spur on Gold April 2015. Inner Show in January 2015. Lucky January 2015. So what the point is, there were 8 winners there on Saturday that have not won a race this year. So just
that would not happen.
Be very careful of the form from Saturday. That's what I'm saying. It's a day where variance is absolutely in play. Those races need to be careful. I think a big part of it was a lot of those races were really provincial midweek standing races. And I assessed them as if I was doing a Saturday meeting, and in hindsight that was a huge mistake. So
lucky. I would risk it again with that profile, exactly, non-winner. And I tweeted out after that race, I go, your values and ways of doing things hold you in great stead, except when they don't.
Yeah.
But out of that, and Shazozo and Mr. Backchat, I'll tell you there's one thing you want to take note of. Tony McAvoy closes his Sydney stable. Never mind the narrative, which boys us all shitless, but there's cause and effect. All of a sudden now he's focused, he's got list, and how I would be right on board the Tony McAvoy bandwagon over the next few weeks.
Well, there was some banter on Twitter about the firmness of the track. You had a discussion with another friend of the show that all the friends are out today in Manny Galagotis.
Manny's a ripper. So let me just, because we went right into this last time around, and so we're not going over the same ground. I had a discussion with a trainer who in the past 12 months, don't guess, because it doesn't matter who he's, in the past 12 months has scratched his horse on an upgrade. And I had a chat with him, and he goes, look, I was that fucking busy, I was kicking myself, I didn't get a chance to go out and walk the track like I normally do, and this horse has got a bit of a joint. So all it's done is confirm to me 2 things. One, they shouldn't be allowed to scratch on it, but exactly. We already know how fucking busy trainers are. It's ridiculous what their workload is, so full respect there. So that's what I did. The second thing I'll add is that, and it's again from a bit of a few chins ago, but from athletics, sort of learn on, that on sand surfaces, the best thing you could do is running on sand, except if you've got an injury, because it'll bring out the injury. And I reckon that's, and the trainer agreed along this line, that if they've got joints, firm tracks are a negative, but if they've got muscle issues, firm tracks are a positive. And conversely, muscle issues on a wet track can really wrench muscle and all that type of. So that's the theory of it. I actually reckon that that the track, what it proved, and these horses pulled up Jari, and this is all public. Johnny McCardle then said, well, Bo Rada's pulled up a bit sore, and I said, all right. So in footy terms, is it like AFL teams when they got their ice packs after him? He said, he said he'll be right, and he's got one more run in him. So in other words, you're pushing these athletes to their utmost. It's not a fucking animal welfare issue if they pull up a bit scratchy, as long as they're okay. And they are okay, because none of these are going to stop their preparation.
Well, I've actually got some breaking news in this.
Yes.
After some extensive research, and I've been to all parts of the state in the last couple of months, racing is in fact an outdoor sport.
Stop it.
Who knew?
Stop it.
It's run on that grease, the grass, not the stuff that...
so if it doesn't rain and there's 50 knot winds, then you can't...
It dries it out.
If someone puts up evens, I'll bet that there were more horses pulled up sore out of Warrnambool than did at Flemington on Saturday. Well, simple as that. End of conversation.
And a lot of those points would have been that they were top of the prep, giving absolutely everything, and that's why. If you go and look at any competitive sport after the match or race, like they're all then patched up because they haven't given it everything.
Well, I'm saying the ones at Warrnambool, the soreness might have been in different parts of the animal. But that surface was significantly more testing. It was finding out any weaknesses. Any chink you had was being exposed on that track. So that's why I say it.
And then it's...
So who were the high profile people, Manny's one you mentioned, that were not happy with Flemington on Saturday?
Brad Spicer, Malua Racing,
Alright.
Manny joined in, then Johnny McCardle, and it was all good chat.
It wasn't...
So I would ask them, what's the alternative? The alternative is that they put another 40 mils, I suppose,
that's what
using the truck. I mean,
then ruin the track.
That's unfortunately, guys. It's hardly rained in Melbourne. Thank God it's raining now because all these tracks need it desperately. But it's hardly rained in. Well, I'll say 6 months, but you might also say the last 12 months. It just hasn't been enough rain.
There's two things. One was Del Prado pulls up scratchy. Pulls up a bit sore, felt the run. Now let's see if the prep's ended or if it keeps racing. Because if it keeps racing, I'm on it next time. You know what? It ran 7 lengths quicker for the first 2/3 of the race. So I reckon that's what made it pull up sore on the firm ground. And now it's ready. Wasn't fit. And the other one, Jamie Mayhew Sharp, who does South Australian form, he joined in and he said, I like backing those Outback South Australian meetings because they race on these fucking rock hard tracks, and those horses are strong enough
to cope with it,
even though they're not much good, but they're strong enough to cope with it, so they run consistently.
Well, some of that form bobbed up at Warrnambool, off those rock hard tracks at Penola and places like that. So, Prestwick's a horse I'm interested in. I'm interested to see if he keeps going after Saturday.
Well, sorry, because you mentioned it. Here's the thing: he is the fastest horse in that race. Now, everyone's saying, did Michael go too fast, or did that prove it? No, because there's the Elton Zara's horse who was at the random place, Katie Mellion rode it perfectly, sitting outside it, and it runs third. So there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe it was so good at sale it flattened it, or it had a different issue, but it's got nothing to do with.
It's obviously had an issue. They haven't gone particularly quick in that race.
Didn't get when they don't get until 300. I'd almost rather that than when
the sectionals are almost identical to the Shizozo race, which is a slightly higher class race, but the overall time's 5 lengths slower. So that says that they've gone 5 lengths slower for the first 800 in Prestwick's race.
Anyway, I've just got it for the Punter Show because you can get it via the Punter Show. Vince Cardi's race speed profiles. I wrote them up. Vince tells me what to write. Fucking unbelievable start at the Gold Coast. Eloping. Now he then waits till the final field and he ended up. So I'll just tell you, it was moderate. Read what he wrote with eloping. I'll tweet it out later. It was unbelievable for a $15 shot. And he stamped the last minute takedown and also who was at the Bjorn Bakers. But so that started now, so you can get the Brisbane race speed profiles via the Punter Show.
And from our conversation about Flemington being too firm, we've come to today, Punter's Day off, as Kilmore was called off early this morning. Sam Hyland actually tweeted a picture out There was a turtle on the training track on the inside there, and that's actually not a joke. There were the puddles, and people were complaining that it was called off. It's pretty simple. As Potts mentioned, it's hardly rained here for 6 months, and then all of a sudden you get an inch of rain overnight, and all it's going to do is sit on top because the ground's so hard it's not going to go in there.
You know, now that Sammy's done that, I reckon that's the next thing on Thursday nights, the Pakenham Synthetics turtle race.
Well, it wouldn't be, yeah. So I'm actually grateful that there's a day off.
I'd love it if we had every Monday off. It'd be good.
Or what was put up on Twitter that I agree with, why don't we have one Monday a month off? It's only one day, and as it's been pointed out by some of the folks at the tab, it doesn't matter if they're betting on something else. We actually make more money by not putting it on.
What was Warrnambool? A once-a-year event that people look forward to and bet. It created the demand. The biggest racing jurisdiction in the world, who has all these other type of advantages, yes, but Hong Kong race twice a week, they could race 3 times a week, I reckon, if they wanted to. Created demand, the sport refuses to do this.
And the thing is, imagine if we did generate a bit more money because we were betting on this other stuff. Like, I'm not being unkind, but the victims are going to get bet no matter what. So that's fine. They're just going to bet on whatever's on the next screen or trackside or whatever. Right. If we get a clip of the ticket and we're not actually paying to put it on, then imagine this for a scenario. You get a day off a month and your prize money goes up. What a novel idea.
They don't want people to make a lot of money out of the sport.
It feeds back all to the same issue in the end. Are the right amount of horses being bred? Is there too many? Is there too few?
Do you think I would have been on the drink if they were racing for 200,000?
Probably not.
No, I don't think so. No.
Can I just say on the point Ralph was making about the Brisbane race beat profiles? Admittedly, I'm very focused on the Melbourne races on Saturday.
Yeah.
I do manage to flick over to 521 to usually catch the Sydney race. So I know who JW's tipped and who Mark Lambourne's on and what Dallas is saying from the yard. So I'm interested to see what happens in that race. I don't even know what channel to turn it over onto these days to watch Adelaide or Brisbane. There was a couple of races there on Sunday I would have liked to have watched. And I didn't know what channel to put it on. So maybe that's just my ignorance. I don't really know. But I don't think it's very good for racing when someone that's heavily involved in the industry has trouble finding what channel to watch the vision on.
No, I see your problem.
With the kids' basketball on Sunday, I watch the Melbourne race on racing.com, and then I've got it on like the old 1970s. I've got the transistor on for Brisbane. The bloke goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, you can't get the," and he's, what? I said, "No, this is how Australian racing works. You can get a Vic app, you can get a New South Wales app. Apparently, if you're a tab customer, you can get the Brisbane." And he said, "Fucking really?" I said, "There we go." So the phrase that racing is the most dysfunctional sport in the country is 100% true, and prime example.
All that we can expose the hypothesis is that you don't have enough TVs in your office.
No, I need more TVs.
If you had 2 or 3, you wouldn't have this problem.
Well, if I want to watch the footy, though, I can certainly find it. I never have any trouble finding what channel the football's on.
Well, and hats off to both. Hats off to Caulfield. They had the footy on where you could see it the week before. Flemington, kind of hats off to them. In all the other areas you could see it, but is there any danger of whacking it on in the betting ring? There might be some people in the betting ring that might also have an interest in footy.
You just reminded me of a great line last night, Dave Hughes from the Logies, about the TV, and Dave paid tribute to SBS, saying as a kid growing up in Warrnambool, without the internet, SBS was one of his favourite channels.
Well, and speaking of TV, we lost the legend of the game today. Reg Grundy passed away, who was one of the famous producers, but also you know that you've really made it in this world when you then become rhyming slang. So Reg Grundy, he passed away. So
was he a punter?
Yeah. And then
we can't afford to lose any.
Nah.
And a big tribute to the bloke who invented the 8-day clock.
Well, I'm going to use the rest of the Punters' Day off to go and fix Bernard Tomic's attitude, and we'll be back at some stage next week.
All the best.
Good luck, punters.